record it. A chap called Wes Linden, who is actually with Utility Warehouse. And he's one of the speakers who goes and speaks at the mastermind events in the US every year. He's quite well in with Orion and Art Jonak in particular. And he's hit the top rank in Utility Warehouse, makes $1 million a year. It's capped. They cap their earnings. So he can't make any more money out of Utility Warehouse as such, but he does very, very nicely. Thank you very much. And he's got a big group, as you would expect. They do well over 100 million a year across his whole business. And he was talking about the basics of the coordinated pitch between a new person and an upline, and what to say effectively. And I know we've covered this many times before. And I have I've got my way of doing things, which is, you know, if I know someone who's new, I would always ring them up and say, hi, John, listen, you know, have you got some time to make some money alongside what you do right now? That would be my standard pitch. But actually, he came up with something quite innovative, which I thought was really interesting. And I thought we should share that with you guys, because it may make it simpler to get to the point and not disguise, but wrap up what you're saying to someone in a way which is more eases it into the conversation in a better way. So you might want to make a note. I haven't actually done a slide on this, but you might want to make a note. What he was talking about is essentially when he opens a conversation, he's opening a conversation with someone that's known. He's teaching his people to open the conversation in this way. As you know, I'm an accountant, a barista, a lorry driver, a lawyer, whatever it happens to be. And here's an option. And I really enjoy it, as you know, or I hate it, as you know. You know, because a lot of people might find their way into networking because they loathe what they do. And actually, some recent research has shown that years ago, there was a company called Mintel. You may remember me talking about this before. But Mintel, I think they're still going, but they did a survey of people and whether they liked the jobs they were in. And 65% of people hated them. And that's now gone up to 85% of people don't like the job they're doing. They're doing it to pay the bills. So a lot of people are feeling kind of trapped in what they do. So the I hate what I do is probably more probable on that basis than the I love what I do. However, as someone who's pitching this, let's just take the first part and say, I love what I do. The problem is, and if it's a relatively low paid job or something like that, someone could be saying, the problem is I know I'm not going to make enough money out of this to retire when I want to. I'm not going to make enough money out of this to travel. I'm not going to make enough money out of this to, to participate in some peculiar thing or other that they want to do, or have the time to do this. In other words, it's I like what I do, but I haven't got the resource to do something that I really want to do, or I hate what I do and I want to change my life in a different way. You know, it's leading along that line. So it's positioning the reason why the conversation is happening. So the reason I started this business I want to share with you is because I want to So now you've got the explanation.
That is good. I find that excellent.
Well, I think, listen, Dermot, you know how long I've been in this industry, this profession, and I think it was great. I really do.
I find the other way, when you start, there's always inclined to be, oh, I'm negative.
Right,
why should I be?
Yeah. So there's a barrier goes up essentially, whereas this way around, it's talking about the positive aspects and outcomes of the conversation rather than the potential for well, what are you selling me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm helping them to achieve their dreams.
Well, potentially, yes, exactly. And so the final element of that is the reason I started this business is so that I could, and so that in a few months or a year or two or whatever it is, I can do that, and repeat it. So I'm not having to give up. In other words, I'm not giving up what I do in order to do this other thing I'm going to suggest to you. I'm running it alongside what I do already.
I mean,
and that's the key.
Yeah, I mean, you get people who not satisfied with what they pay, and when they ask for increased pay, they don't get it. But when they then turn around to the boss and say, well, I'm leaving, then he says, oh, but you can't leave. I need you, and I'll give you some more money. Then what they've been asking for, they don't get. But when they kind of say, well, I'm pissing off now, then they get it.
Well, potentially that happens. But you see, when I was an employer, which I was for a long part of my life, I never ever gave in to that level of blackmail. If someone wanted to go, they wanted to go because their mind wasn't on what they wanted, what I wanted them to do. It was on moving on. So I never bribed people to stay with me. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter how important they were. I've always worked on the basis that, so there's always someone else. And yes, it could be painful in the short run, but I always felt that in the longer run, it was something you shouldn't do, is not bribe people. Ideally, you never want to have that conversation because if you treat them in the right way, you generally don't, unless it's a genuine career move for reasons that you have no control over. Yes, that's happened to me a number of times with people where I've helped them to get to the point where their skills were such that they could move into different arenas. And so what I thought was that this was a really nice way of actually helping to share it with other people. It's also simple enough to teach someone who's brand new to say that to their clients in order to affect the three-way. Sorry, not their clients, their potential partners and or customers, mostly partners we're talking about here. Because that, of course, drives the new partner volume, which in turn drives the duplication of effort in your organization. So it comes back, and this is the real thrust of what I'm trying to get at here, it comes back to that duplication of effort and the very simple training that needs to be done of a new partner at the front end in order to get them to open the door. Because if you're making the calls for them, how do they know what to do? How can they duplicate activity? How do they how can they then teach their own people? So it's all very well if someone is willing to share their list with you, but what I'm saying is don't take it away from them. It's working with them to get this kind of very simple approach to people off pat. So you train it, you practice it. You train it, you practice it. You train it, you practice it. And once they've got that very simple concept in their heads, it's then helping them to make that call. By all means, do it in terms of setting it in the diary, being available at the time. You could even be connected together at the time they dial their new partner, potential partner, so that you're there on tap. Because to me, that helps to drive the process. So what I wanted to share that with you because I think it's all important that we get more duplication of activity going on, and in terms of the team effort, because what came out of September's volumes in certain other areas of the business is that those who are working well together, grouping together all the time, are producing results the rest of us aren't. And that's because there's this collective activity going on. I'll give you another really good example. In fact, in a way, this is a better example. Ria Kamras, you would have heard of.
Yeah.
She is a president. It took her 2 years to reach president.
Yeah, that was fast.
And that's because they have this team activity going on in Hungary, which is not affected by anybody else, because the vast majority of Hungarians don't speak English. So because of that, they're not tainted by the hype of the American side of things and the color of everybody else who's kind of pushing in different messages at them. And the team that was developed there with Attila Balázs and Ria Kamras is essentially one that's all driven together because they only do what they're taught to do. And that's what we're not doing. We're not teaching our people to do it enough. We're not drilling into the very simple concepts of how we initially communicate and getting that discipline in place, which makes it simple for others then to do it. So what I'm going to say is, I'd like to run a series of sessions on just this on a one-to-one basis, so that we can teach it to each other. We can share it with each other on the basis of driving activity that's known, that's then duplicatable. Duplicable, I think, is the correct word. Although duplicables come into English parlance these days, are driven mostly by this industry, I suspect. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's my message right now. Is, activity comes out of coordinated effort.
I like it.
And I think a lot of us, we're a bit like we're a bit like marathon runners. We're running on our own, and we're not running as a team to work with each other. One thing, kind of mixing metaphors in a way, but it's like a cyclist team. They rotate who's leading the team in order to make it easier for those to follow behind to get better, more results and a better momentum out of the whole team. So that's what I'm throwing out there. Please give me some feedback. I'd appreciate that.
I like the idea a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I like the idea. The problem with apart from Rob, there's two sign-ups that we had over the last few months is are nutritionists, and I kind of got the idea that all right, sign up a nutritionist, and then I'll go and do it with all their clients. But I can't really tell them how to do it with their clients, because that's sort of their business, and what do I know about it anyway?
Well, the answer
doesn't quite fit in with that one.
Well, it kind of does and it doesn't. I mean, the principle is exactly the same, because essentially with a nutritionist, they don't cast themselves largely in the role of a salesperson, is my experience. So they would, again, my experience says that they're likely to not to pick the phone up and call these people and say, I've got something that you need to have. They're doing it as a side effect of a conversation that they might have with them, rather than it being the primary reason why they would do it.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest in that sense is saying to them, look, would you perhaps helping them to structure a conversation in a way with those people that would teach them how to open the door. And in a sense, this kind of approach is relatively straightforward, because they've got an even simpler message, in as much as, nutritionally, I need you to be aware of your omega-3/6 profile, which we haven't tested for before. We now have a test that we can do for you, which will help you to understand what you need in terms of supplementation for that, because we know I've recently found out that 97% of people are going to be out of balance, significantly enough for it to be a challenge. So I personally would be offering to help them to do that.
Yes.
From the point of view of people like Rob, who's come on for a business, this is this is it. This is the approach you should be taking, because Rob needs to be able to understand how to do this with his own people. We all need to be able to know how to understand how to do this with our own people. And there's not enough of that going on. And that's not criticism, it's just the way it is. And in order for it to change, we have to change what we do. And I'm going to be doing that across the board, because we can get a lot more out of, we can achieve a lot more if we do these things together.
Yeah.
I very much like the idea, and I like the idea of doing, of having more specific information, as opposed to being told this is what you should do. I don't like I don't listen to Monday mostly, because I feel like I'm being talked at.
Yeah.
and I Marco, bless him, or as the Cornish would say, dear of him, has a way of
Hang on. Let me stop recording.
oh shit, yes.